Hello. So I'm Isabel from Animal Aid, and I am really excited to welcome everyone to Manchester this weekend because I'm actually from Manchester. So I always find it really fun to have so many cool people in Manchester talking about the cool things that they're doing. And this is one of the cool things that has happened in Manchester over the past couple of decades. Manchester has the sad history that this is where Greyhound racing started. It was on the 24th of July, 1926. The very first Greyhound race happened in the UK, and it was about 10 minutes that way at Bellevue Stadium. But these awesome people spent 20 years outside Bellevue Greyhound Stadium, holding up placards, handing out leaflets, raising awareness, and opposing that stadium, and it is gone now. It's now been demolished. They've built housing there instead, which is something that we actually need. And it's really nice that now in the 100th year of Greyhound racing, the place where it started is already gone. And there are 17 tracks left in the UK, and our job is to get rid of the rest of them. I believe the next slide. Yeah, that's us. So Animal Aid is actually quite new to the game. Those activists that were there for 20 years, there's lots of different organisations that help that to happen and that help to resource them. Animal Aid has got a very long history itself, though. We've been campaigning for animal rights for almost 50 years. It's 50 years next year. And one of our key campaigns has always been horse racing. We've been sort of monitoring and documenting and saying the names of the horses who have died whilst being forced to race. And it's kind of important for us to also speak up on behalf of dogs who are suffering similar things. So it's really important for us at this point to start a Greyhound racing campaign last year. And the way that we did that is, So what we did was we started by doing a big ad campaign, basically. So we found the stories of 4 individual dogs, real case studies, because they are the important people in this issue. So there was Sid, Molly, Elsie, and Dakota were the names of the dogs that we used, and they were on billboards all over the London Underground. This was our Hounds of the Underground campaign. And we told their stories, basically. We kind of wanted them to be front and centre in the messaging that we're putting out there, because everything that's happening to these dogs, it's happening to real dogs. Greyhound racing is something that happens kind of out of sight of most people. If you don't know about it already, you're not going to find out about it unless we actively come and bring you these dogs. So that was Molly. And the way that we approached it is we wanted to make it very, very clear that we were coming for a legislation change. So we did a petition, and we went for a government petition because we wanted them to take notice. They responded. They said they had no plans to ban Greyhound racing because they consider it a well-regulated sport. It's not. It's a self-regulated industry, which means that they can make up their own rules and mark their own homework and decide what they think is acceptable, which happens to be injuries and deaths and lots of horrible things happening to dogs. So whilst we were doing all of this work at this level to try and appeal to the government, there was also work going on elsewhere all over the country at the 17 different dog tracks across the country.
And before I talk to you about that kind of grassroots activism of the campaigners trying to close down their local dog tracks, I wanted to tell a little bit about my story and how that's aligned with greyhounds, mostly by coincidence. So in 2019, I was working straight out of university. I got a job at my local RSPCA. Boo. I was working just as a lowly animal care assistant. I was mostly working with the dogs and caring for them and doing quite important work on the ground, but obviously only for companion animals or animals kept as companions. And in 2019, I was about to leave the RSPCA when we got around 30 dogs came into my local branch, and they came from a trainer called Rebecca Perkins. And this was quite a big news story at the time, and it was a huge scandal for the Greyhound industry, because her local track had closed, and instead of doing the responsible thing and either continuing to care for the greyhound she claimed to love or rehoming them, which is normally what happens, she just left them to fade away. But thankfully, people intervened. They came to the RSPCA where I was working, and I met these incredible, beautiful greyhounds. And their stories just really stayed with me. And it's only really once I started campaigning for greyhounds properly that I realised the timeline really aligned. So that was 2019 this happened. And 4 years later, I was working with Animal Rising, and we disrupted the Grand National, which was a hugely significant event. It got on like 9 front pages. But whilst we were doing that, I was like, it's inconsistent if we're not also advocating for the greyhounds. And whilst, you know, it might not be as newsworthy as the Grand National because it's a dying, potentially even dead industry, it's still really important that we're there. And so 3 incredible individuals, Nathan, Alistair and Oren, before the Greyhound Derby, the biggest race in the racing calendar in England, before the Greyhound Derby, climbed up their big televised screen that they show the race on at the dog track and dropped this incredible banner. And there were plans to disrupt the race that unfortunately weren't successful. The race went ahead. And I wanted to continue campaigning for greyhounds at the time, but for a number of reasons I didn't. But really coincidentally, as we were doing this, Rebecca Perkins, who had abused those greyhounds and neglected them, was remarkably, it took 4 years, was finally being sentenced for that cruelty. And so it really coincided, and I was able to do this action and talk about their story basically, and this story that's not unique in greyhound racing. It's incredibly common. So that's the history. And then around this time last year, I was at VARC and I was thinking, why is there still dog racing? Why is there still the racing of dogs, rather? And I looked into it. Within 30 minutes of my house, there were 3 dog tracks. There were only 18 left at the time. So I was like, maybe I can close these 3 dog tracks through like a powerful concerted pressure campaign. And I was thinking, if I'm doing 3 of them, is anyone else doing any of the others? And it turns out there were a handful of campaigns. Some of them were active, some of them less so. Some of them had died around the time of COVID. Some of them had a history of like coming and going. So in Oxford, for example, there was a track, then there wasn't a track. Then they tried to bring the track back and they campaigned against it reopening. Unfortunately, it reopened and it just existed for a bit. So I reached out to people organising already against their local tracks, connected them to one another because they weren't talking all of the time necessarily. And then in gaps where there was a track but no campaigners, we did our best to find people. And the culmination of that was last August. Taking it back a tiny bit, I mentioned being at VARC last year. All of this was going around my head, and I went to a talk by Tom Harris, and he spoke about closing one of his dog tracks. And I went to Animal Aid, and I was like, you know, Horse Death Watch, where you track all of these horses who are dying in the racing industry. Why don't we have one for dogs? And it's a little bit because there's less transparency, less awareness, and so it's actually really incredibly hard to track them. And we'll talk a bit about that because it's something we're now trying to do. But this conversation kind of started a collaboration combining this national level legislative change campaign with grassroots local people trying to shut down their local dog tracks. And so what all of this thinking culminated in was last August, with those 18 tracks left. It's a fluctuating number, so don't get too attached to that number. We held 18 protests at the remaining dog tracks in England because there were no dog tracks in Scotland, and there was Wales were banning it, and we didn't want to step on their toes. So in England, 18 tracks. We protested against every single one in the same week. And I don't think that had ever been done before. We were helped by the fact there were only 18 tracks, but it was still an incredible achievement. I think we had around 200 activists take part. There were also at the same time outreaches happening in different cities like London and I think Southampton as well. And from that, the idea is these campaigns that could turn into more than just protests and will become, and in some cases have already become, really powerful pressure campaigns to try and close these tracks. And a huge immediate victory, not attributed to us at all because the track was already closing. In our week of action, Birmingham Perry Bar closed, so there's now no dog track in Birmingham. And then at the end of last year, as a result of some incredible campaigners in Swindon dog track raced for the last time. So that was 28th of December or something. On Boxing Day, I got a coach down from Glasgow to go and celebrate with them, which incredible achievement down to like the work of these local campaigners. And now we've got campaigners targeting the 17 remaining tracks in England. I also want to talk about another strand of this campaign. I mentioned, Horse Death Watch and how we're trying to track the dogs in this industry. So we know dogs are suffering, not just in kennels like Rebecca Perkins' dogs, but on the tracks themselves. They're forced to race around these dangerous tracks where, on average, a dog is dying every 2 to 3 days or is being killed. And it's grossly cruel, it's grossly unfair, it's largely ignored and missed by not just activists, by the general public, because it's not common knowledge. It's an industry that is solely persisting on like an online audience and gambling. And so most people don't know it's happening. Some of the tracks aren't even signposted, like you wouldn't know they were there. I had someone come up to me the other day and be like, I remember when there was dog track in Newcastle like decades ago, and I was like, it's still there, and they just didn't realize. What we're doing to try and track down these dogs and enhance the transparency of the industry so that we can close it down easier is we're watching every single race. And so these races are live streamed, and really importantly, the live streams themselves, they last all day. So it's a pain in the ass to monitor live. But after the races, the replays for the race are uploaded onto a website. And so we're getting people to watch the replays. But really sneakily, whenever there's a fall, 9 times out of 10, that replay is just not there. And so we then have to go back and check the live stream, which we're sneakily recording, to find out what happened in that race. And they're really sneaky as well because they write down what happened in the race. And they'll use euphemisms. They'll use words like, oh, this dog was checked, means probably they were knocked over. Or rails, they just put rails, means they probably hit the rails, potentially fell over as well. And they use these euphemisms to get away with it. And so it's a lot of work. But we have 30 plus incredible volunteers now watching around 70 race meetings. And each race meeting is up to 12 races each week. And that's the equivalent of like 20 hours of work. So it's an incredible amount of effort that these volunteers are putting into also watching quite grueling footage. Like, it's not pleasant, and you have to listen to the commentators making shitty puns and making light of what's happening to these dogs. So it's not nice at all. But thanks to their incredible work, we're able to highlight a fraction of the terrible incidents that happen. The original plan was to post every single fall, expecting there to be one maybe once a day. Some days there's 10 plus, so we can't even post every single incident of fall. To fact check the industry's own statistics around injuries and deaths, and to produce track specific data and video compilations of incidents that we can use in outreach. Originally we were thinking when we're doing outreach, we could have a video playing of all of the incidents from a specific track. And I would say for each track, we've probably got 3 minutes of footage now easily, and we're only in March. It's really bad what's happening to these dogs. And then finally, we're hoping to, similar to Horse Death Watch, create a database of dogs who may be at risk of having been killed as a result of their fall, or, as the industry call it, being retired. And again, trying to track down those dogs. Are they being rehomed? Are they being retained by the trainer or the owner of the Greyhound? In which case, 9 times out of 10, they're going back into the kennel that they've been kept in their whole life. Or is something else happening? Are they being shipped abroad? Are they being used for breeding? Any number of like really nasty things are happening to these dogs. And I'll pass back to Isabel to talk a bit about the impact.
I forgot I had to speak again, sorry. Yeah, so this is a really cool week to be giving this talk because Greyhound racing was banned in Wales on Tuesday and then again in Scotland on Wednesday, which is so much fun. We can't take credit for that because that was loads of work that was done by a lot of other like amazing campaign organisations, but it's time for England now. It's way past time for England, and we're just really, really motivated to get this done now. There is the standard has been set by other countries within the Four Nations, and we are chasing them up. So I mentioned earlier that we received the response to the government petition saying that they consider it well regulated. That was back in October, but I've been like twitching ever since to come back on that because it absolutely is not. And I have been through a lot of the industry's data and the industry's records about their own disciplinary procedures to submit a letter to 4 different government agencies. So it went to DEFRA, DCMS, Department Culture, Media, Sport, thank you. Gambling Commission and the Home Office to detail all of the things that are in the industry's own records that is potentially criminal activity. So things like the prevalence of cocaine being found in dogs, which is always remarkably just some kind of mad accident that happens at every kennel. Who amongst us doesn't accidentally give our dogs cocaine sometimes? But they never ever report it to the police when this happens, and there's obviously controlled substances involved, and the fine is standard of £500 for giving a dog cocaine. So yeah, we're fuming about it. We've written to all of these departments about it, and was it this week, Adrian Ramsey? This week, Adrian Ramsey has referenced that letter, and we are basically taking this fight even further at a parliamentary level, whilst all of this work continues to go on at a grassroots and local level.
Yeah, and I think originally, obviously, this is a collaboration working at both levels, and originally I had limited hope for legislation to ban this, and the plan with the grassroots activism was to shut the tracks down one by one. But I think my mind's shifting, like the incredible victories in Wales and Scotland, the Green Party as well, their victory near here in Gorton and Denton. They're the only party that I'm aware of with as policy, they want a ban on greyhound racing. And so I'm now more hopeful that the original strategy was shut them down one by one. Maybe it's just get the Greens in Parliament. But it doesn't diminish the incredible work activists are doing on the ground. And I just want to, before talking about this march, I do want to speak to their credit that one part of this campaign, not only do we want to end dog racing, we want to be speaking up for all animals, and we want to be strengthening the grassroots movement that we've heard so much about at this conference, and the incredible talk at the beginning by Kate Fowler about the power of ordinary people to do things. And I really wanted to empower people to run campaigns. And so once we end dog racing, which we will, and we'll do it very soon, they can go on to campaign for something else. And I just want to give one example of one of our many incredible campaigners. It happened to be a friend of mine who lived near one of the tracks and had never done any kind of activism, never been to a protest. She was vegan, and I was like, I could do with your help closing down this track. Are you interested? And she's now organising that campaign alongside another incredible person, but she's doing that having never even attended a protest prior to this. And she's already talking about what she wants to do next, going after sea life in Birmingham, for example, and any number of other campaigns that will hopefully spring from this once we've won. But yeah, just to wrap up before we go to questions, I wanted to highlight, Isabel mentioned it's the 100-year anniversary of dog racing in England, in the UK, and that anniversary falls on the 24th of July, which is a Friday. And so the next day, the 25th of July, we're going to be marching in London for the Greyhounds, advocating for their freedom, shitting on the celebrations that the industry will be trying and failing to have. And we hope this will be like a huge moment of bringing people together who care about dogs. And, it's a brilliant liberation framing. We've heard a lot about that potentially today, depending on which talks you've gone to. People resonate with this, and they get animal freedom when it comes to greyhounds who are abused in kennels and on racetracks. And I don't think it's a huge stretch to nudge those people along their journey to start thinking about the other animals who might be confined to cages, like chickens or pigs or whoever it is. So, yeah, please do join us on the 25th of July at 11:30 a.m. We're meeting opposite St. Paul's Cathedral, Knight Rider Court. It's where the Greyhound Board of Great Britain, that self-regulating body that does such a good job, it's where their offices are. They obviously won't be there, but that's not a problem. We will be there, and we'll be marching from there to Parliament Square, and we expect to be joined by a lot of greyhounds, if you needed any more excuses to come. A lot of people, and we're also working to try and get other organisations involved, big names to make this like a really momentous moment and to break out of our echo chambers a little bit. And I'm really hopeful, and let's make this 100-year anniversary the last year of greyhound racing in England.